Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome, I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today is a classically trained singer who has sung in the United States and Europe and has also been a university music professor. The power of stories and music's healing qualities have woven their way through her life and found voice in her writing. She loves the Cavalier dog breed and his own three. Her book series features Cavalier King Charles Spaniel as the story's narrator. Her debut book in the series, Finding My Yip, was named finalist in the 2021 American Writing Awards in the children's fiction category. Book 2 in her series, A Hard Nut to Crack, was named finalist in the National Indie Excellence Awards in 2022 in the children's chapter books category. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Christine Isley-Farmer.
Good afternoon, Julia. Thank you for interviewing me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. Our opening question is always, so what took you so long to write a book?
Well, I have to say that I have embarked on my third career. The first career I had was as a professional opera and concert singer. And I sang in Europe and I also sang here in the United States. So I did that for a while. When I returned from Europe, I became a university professor. I retired from that in May 2020. And at that time, I had already had the kernel of a story I wanted to write in my mind. And then I started writing my books.
Well, once you knew you wanted to write those books, or after you wrote them, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to use a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
It took me a while to decide what I wanted to do. I bought books on literary agents, and I started searching for a literary agent. But after I read and went to several writing conferences, I think that's something that if anybody wants to be a writer, they need to go to writing conferences so that they can find out a lot more about the publishing and marketing aspect of writing a book. Because even if you have a literary agent who is successful at selling you to a publishing company, you're still going to have to do marketing on your own. It's not something that it's automatically done for you. But anyway, I decided after investigating that and that I really didn't want to wait 2 or 3 years maybe to find a literary agent. Some people are successful at that. Some people are not successful at it. And I decided I have these stories in me and I want to write them. So I contacted someone I knew in Nashville, Tennessee, who has a small press. And I was able to talk to her about it, and we have an agreement. She formats my books, edits my books, and that's how I've proceeded. And I also wanted to get 2 books out every year, and that's difficult if you have for children's books. In the chapter book series that I have written, you have to have illustrations. So I had to find someone who would be an illustrator for me. And I found someone locally who does a really great job.
Well, that painting over your shoulder looks like somebody who could be your illustrator.
Well, that's done by my husband. He did a painting, an oil painting of our second Cavalier. His name was Trevor. And usually it hangs downstairs in our hallway. But today for this podcast, I hung him up to honor him. And this is what a Cavalier looks like. And the Cavalier is the narrator of my book series.
Well, Christine, my husband and I are dog lovers as well, but we chose Labradors. What about your Cavaliers inspired you to write children's books featuring them?
Well, they're a sweet breed. They have these beautiful, big brown eyes. They're easily trainable. I don't know if I could. My Cavalier that I have is now underneath the computer here, sleeping at my feet. But I just thought, what a good breed, because children love them and they love children. Not every breed is good for a child to have. So I thought this is a good breed, and I wanted to pair a dog up in my first book who could not yip like his sisters, and paired him up with a little girl who has a stutter. And she wants to learn how to sing, but she doesn't have the confidence to do it. She's afraid she will stutter when she sings. So that's how the first story came around. And of course, I have a music background. And when I was thinking about writing a book, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to have not just a child in the book, but have a narrator that's a dog. You don't always find that in children's books. So that's what I decided to do. And I thought, in my own life, I noticed that I was not always comfortable public speaking. A lot of people aren't. I think there's an art to that. And I thought, when I public spoke, I had to have notes because I was afraid that I would stammer or stutter during my presentation. So it made sense to me. Now, that didn't happen to me when I was on stage singing, or when I even had dialogue on stage in the operettas. But I think public speaking to me was always a little bit quirky and a little bit more anxiety producing. So I thought, well, the kernel for an idea of a stuttering child and a dog that can't yip is perfect for the first story.
I agree. And I think public speaking, I read once, frightens people more than the death of a spouse. That is a lot of stress right there.
It is a lot of stress. I admire people who can really do it well.
Mm-hmm. Well, children's books are very valuable real estate with such few pages. How do you make every sentence count?
Well, my books are usually around 10,000 words in length. And how do I make each word count? It's interesting. What I do for my books is I write the story out on a legal pad. I don't even go to a computer until I've written the whole story out. And then I go and put it on the computer. But I found that I work better as a writer when I access the sense of the pencil in my hand to the brain. And so I just started writing my stories. Once I got the first one written, I started writing the second one. And I have all 6 of them written. They're just in different stages of, being finished. The 4th one right now is being formatted, and the illustrations have been done, and that should release in October. So, but I stopped at 6. There's something that told me this series is going to be finished at the 6th book. I had thought about writing a 7th one, and then I thought, no, I think I've done what I want to do with these characters. I think writers know that. And then they move on to something else.
Well, will you write more children's books? Will you have different characters?
I don't know. I like to write poetry, and I'm thinking, and I have poetry that I've written. I'm thinking about maybe just as a vanity project to publish my poems. It would be more of a legacy for my family and friends than anything else. I've thought about that, and I've also thought about turning my children's books into a coloring book.
That would be nice. And I've seen lots of stuffed animals that go along with children's books. So maybe you should design a Cavalier Spaniel as a stuffed animal.
Yeah, I think there are all kinds of things you can do. I'm just not trying to project myself too far into the future, and just stay with what I'm doing right now.
Well, and also your poetry, poetry has made a real comeback. Not that it ever went away, but there's so many young people today who are interested in poetry. And I hear that it is really doing very well.
I can imagine. I mean, it's such an art, a beautiful art too. One of my favorite poets is Mary Oliver. I don't know if you've ever read any of her poetry, but she has a book out called Dog Songs, and not too far back, I posted one of the poems from her book on my Facebook post with a picture of my dog. Oh. She says you should not just love your dog, but you should love all dogs, your neighbor's dogs. Dogs are made to be loved. They make our world better.
I definitely agree. They've become our children now that the children are gone and the grandchildren don't live close.
And you have a Labrador, right?
We have two
what
large
are their names?
labs. Yeah. One is Memphis Belle and one is Texas Star.
Oh, neat. My dad loved Labradors, and I grew up with Labrador retrievers.
Mm-hmm. They're sweet dogs too.
Yeah, I can remember we went to the beach one summer and he caught a seagull.
Oh, goodness. I say I'm going to take retriever out of our dogs' names because they don't retrieve anything. They just lie around and look pretty.
Are they older dogs?
They're getting older, and it's starting to really worry us.
I know. It's hard. My Cavalier is 10. And so he doesn't seem to be slowing down, but I like to walk him in the early mornings. And I was thinking not too long ago, I'm not going to be able to walk him for an hour, I think, for too much longer. You'll have to go out for a 20-minute walk.
That exercise also keeps our gears churning in our minds, and we come home and sometimes we can get some words on paper after that exercise.
You're right about that. You're exactly right. I love it because it's meditative. I just love being outside and hear the birds tweeting and listen and hear them fussing at one another and the squirrels jumping from tree to tree. You're right. It brings you into a meditative state. And you get ideas.
Yes, what a beautiful world we live in.
I know. We're so grateful, and hopefully that we will be able to save it.
What about your writing routine? Are you a morning person or night person? Do you have a strict routine?
I don't have, and I don't write every day. I don't have a strict routine, but most of the time when I'm writing, I like to write. Come back from my walk, have breakfast, and then I'll come up into my bonus room. And if I'm going to write, I'll write early. By the end of the day, I'm usually tired, my husband's home, and I don't want to spend my time with him up here writing on my books.
Well, what about the publicity for these books? We writers would rather be writing than marketing or doing public relations for ourselves. Have you found any publicity that worked or didn't work?
Well, for my first book, I hired a publicist. Books Forward was my publicist. And they did a very good job. They got me podcasts. They posted on Instagram, and mostly on Facebook and Instagram. And and got me interviews, podcasts and interviews and features, this, that, and the other. But I've been sort of proactive in learning how to do Canva posts on my own. So I post on my own social media. I post on my professional page and Instagram, and also on my personal page, and LinkedIn and Twitter. But how do you break through the algorithms? That's the problem. And Facebook is, everybody says, well, now do TikTok. And I am just not, I've looked into it. I took a seminar on it, and TikTok is not my thing.
No. I just don't know if I can be dancing around holding my book, but maybe you could get a Cavalier to run around and, people love dog and kitten videos.
That's true. That's true. And I've posted some videos on Facebook, but it's again, trying to get into that market. I think for children's book, and I was given the advice that you need to get your books into the libraries, local libraries. You need to go to local libraries, do book signings, like I did last weekend. I went to our local library, and they scheduled an interactive event for me to do with the children. I read to them, talked to them about writing, and I sold some books as a result of that. So that's one way to do it. However, we've been in the pandemic. We're still in a pandemic. And it's not always easy for certain people to get out. They may be, compromised or older, and they don't want to expose themselves to COVID any more than they have to. And it's not easy. I found at the library last weekend, I did not read with a mask on because the children have a hard time hearing you. And I think that's if you're reading, period. Even adults might have difficulties hearing you. But I think once this calms down, let's hope it is going to calm down, but we just have to take care of ourselves. And the things that we might have done earlier with advertising books are sometimes not as available to us now.
Well, I wondered about school libraries as your market, or bookstores that have reading groups.
Yes.
I know there's a way to get into all those school libraries. And, we used to have to send money for all of our children to buy books at school. Maybe you could offer some type of incentive and sell those books as fundraisers for the school.
Yes, that's a good idea. And I was told, I won't name the author's name, but she's fairly well known. She told me, yes, you need to get your books into school libraries. And she told me how to do it. She said, just write a postcard. I have a couple of elementary school contacts already, and have talked to them about possibly coming into the school and reading to the children and doing something interactive like I did last weekend. That's the way to get your books introduced to people. It's not all about putting it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. It's just not.
Well, a lot of times it's so difficult to get around to every place and to spend your time, one-on-one, but certainly that is the best way to do for children's books.
I think so too. And even my books are on Amazon, but that Amazon also has an algorithm.
Yes, they do. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book that you brought today and read a few paragraphs or pages for us to hear your tone and voice in the book.
Okay. Well, the book that I thought, thank you for asking me to do this. I don't think I've had a podcaster ask me to read from my books, but the one I chose to read from is the first book in the series. because it introduces the main characters. There are three main characters in all of my books, and that is Nana Weathers, who has a magic ring. Harry Potter, here we come. Boomer, who's the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, and Chloe, the little girl who stutters. And I already talked about that. But part of Chloe's beginning to develop self-confidence is going to dog obedience school with her dog. And at this dog obedience school, they meet a Chihuahua named Peanut. Peanut is the bully of the class. Now imagine, the smallest dog is the bully. So the 8th chapter in Finding My Yip is called, and I'll let you see the illustration too, is called Peanut. Bob, our trainer, stood in front of the room. He said, "Owners, take your dogs to the wall. We are going to practice a new command today. I'll come around to each of you and throw a toy to your dog. You'll give the command to leave it, then pull your dog by its leash away from the toy. When your dog understands the command and doesn't go after the toy, give it a treat." Bob went around to all the dogs in the room several times. Each one of us was able to understand the command and do it. So Bob said, "Let's move on to the next stage. I'm going to throw a toy to the middle of the room. When I do, let go of your dog's leashes and give the command to leave. Leave it." When Bob threw the toy to the middle of the room, Jack, a boy who was bigger than Chloe and Robbie, told his dog Peanut to leave it. But Peanut ran growling, ran barking to the middle of the room. He yipped, "Stay out of my way. This toy is mine." He picked the toy up, shaking it from side to side. None of us, even if we'd forgotten the command, would have run to the middle of the room. We knew Peanut was a bully and would have fought us for that toy if we did. Peanut's behavior got worse as our classes went on. He wet the floor if we got close to him. He'd yip, "You think you're the top dog here? Well, I've got news for you. I may be a Chihuahua, but I'm the big shot in this class. Get out of my way. This space is mine." All of us tried to stay as far away as possible. Bob sometimes cleaned up Peanut's messes, but after Peanut continued to have bad manners, he said to Jack, "I need you to clean up after your dog when he makes a mess on the floor. I must pay more attention to the rest of the dogs." Doogie, who said he was a German Shepherd puppy, was afraid of Peanut. During one class, he pulled away from his owner. Running out of the room, tail tucked between his legs, he yipped, "Take me home. I can't stand this pipsqueak anymore." To see a dog much larger than Peanut running away wasn't funny. Even though Chloe and Robbie kept practicing with Hoppy and me after school, Chloe was still having trouble saying the commands without stuttering. In class, she only wanted to give me hand signals. Bob reminded her to say and do the hand signals together whenever possible. In one class, Chloe had to speak. Bob explained how it went. "Your dogs will understand how important this command is by the sound and volume of your voice. If you think your dog is in danger or lost, use your highest and loudest voice to call their name over and over. Chloe, you and Boomer will be the first pair to do the exercise." All of us went out of the training room into the store. Robbie led me down a long aisle. When Chloe called, he was supposed to drop my leash. Bob said, "Chloe, call Boomer. You can't see him. He's lost." In a loud, clear voice, Chloe shouted, "Boomer, Boomer, Boomer, Boomer." She repeated my name over and over without stuttering. When I reached her side, she petted me and said, "Good boy, Boomer." I got my favorite treat. "I hope all of you were paying attention," Bob said. "That was a perfect example of how this command should be given." Chloe gave me a big smile.
That's so cute. I have been in many of those training classes and in that store with the aisles and my dog smelling everything down the entire aisle. So I was right there with you the entire time.
Yeah, Boomer says that whenever he goes down the food aisle, he starts to drool. But that's really an exercise that I did with my dogs.
Yes. And I love that it's from the dog's point of view. We often wonder what they're thinking.
Exactly.
Christine, what do you think was the best money you've ever spent as a writer?
The best money I ever spent as a writer for writing my books.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best money is hiring a professional editor. And I had someone talk to me about that and said, I was telling them that I use a professional editor. And they said to me, we get a lot of books and some of them just are not professionally edited and we're not interested in them. They're just not well written. So that would be my advice. Even if you are an English professor, you just need somebody else's viewpoint, somebody else who's reading it without the bias that you have about your own books. I think that I've written everything and I write, rewrite, and rewrite. And still, she comes back with things that I need to change. So, and she also has another reader read it for me as well. So I think that's the most valuable money I've ever spent right there, professional editing.
I agree because I can look at your work and I can immediately find your mistakes. But if I look at my own work, because I've looked at it too many times, I will print a book and find my mistakes in it after 3 or 4 editors even. So the more eyes we can put on it, the better.
And you're right about that. I mean, I read some traditionally, I'm not talking about children's books, but traditionally published books for adults. And I find grammatical mistakes all the time. And I'm thinking, it's really easy to overlook something. And maybe in transferring from hardback to paperback, I don't know how that happens, but it can happen. So, nothing is perfect, but we want to try to make it the best we possibly can. Because your name is on that book. So if somebody else picks it up and says, this is not well written, that's not what you want to be selling.
No. Well, Christine, our last interview question is always, our writers over 50 are quite a unique group. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
Oh, let's see. Well, not everybody that's 50 is retired. And I didn't retire until after my 50s. So, but what I would say is if you're still working, if you can, if it's even possible, find a quiet space where you are not distracted by your children or grandchildren, and take that time. You may not be able to do it every day, but have that place, even if it's going out on your front porch and sitting with your computer and writing down ideas, or a journal. Keep a journal. Lots of times ideas can come to you from a journal, and you may not have time to start writing about it, but you've written it down in your journal. You can carry a journal to work with you. So and the luxury I have is I'm retired, so I can practically, I do other things during the day besides writing and working on my books, but I have the luxury of saying, okay, I think I'll go up after lunch and I'll, read a couple of chapters of my next book and do some editing. So I'm not going to say write every day because I don't think that's possible. But have a quiet space and maybe have a journal where you can write down the kernels of your ideas for books or poetry or whatever you enjoy writing.
I think that's great advice. And I've heard people say that ideas come to them in dreams. So maybe we should keep our journals beside our bed, because those dreams seem to vanish into the morning sun. So that's a great idea. Well,
You're right, Julia.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And we are so happy to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Oh, thank you. I feel privileged. I like being an author over 50. I embrace that.
I do as well. Thank you.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend, and check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's D-A-I-L-Y, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing, and remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.